one of the things that I want to work on just for a moment, just worth the effort, is showing you how to blend better. And this is one of those areas. This is called wet on wet blending. There are several kinds of blending in painting. You have wet on wet and you have wet on dry, okay? And then you have sort of a dry brush blending technique, which we kind of just used on that haze. But one of the biggest problems I find out as we try to build backgrounds is a lot of you are still struggling with how to use the proper use of your Hake brush and how to get a nice, soft, gentle blend, okay? Say for a sky or a big body of water. I have to really get this point across because it's important that you have good backgrounds if you're going to have good middle ground and good foregrounds. Okay, first of all, keep in mind that you always want to put a light coat of water. Now, again, folks, these are studies, so don't think we're not going to do an entire painting. We're just going to do an upper sky area. This is a blending technique, and you'll hear me a lot often on our tapes and in the book and in classes saying use big X's or crisscross strokes. And I tell you, it's important that you get that nailed down. Now, the next thing you want to do after you've put your water on there, and notice it's not dripping, it's just a light coating of water. All that does is help buy you just a little blending time. Now, while that's still wet, this is the key right here. Let's get up here. You take your gesso, and you put a nice liberal coat of gesso on. Now, notice what I'm doing here. There's no particular way to put it on at this stage. But you go ahead and you just get it on there. Here's where most of you go wrong. You get the gesso on, but then you stretch it. Because it's wet, see, your brush slides easily. What most of you do is you take this gesso you have here, and you come across and you stretch it. So what happens is, as you go across, you can't see it, but the water is weakening the pigment of the gesso. So when you put your color on, so that's what causes the splotchy look in your canvases that so many of you call or write me about and say, I can't get my sky to blend. Well, I know what happens because I see it happen in every workshop I ever teach all over the country. What you have to do, folks, don't be skimpy. After you put a little gesso on, work it in. Notice how I'm making sure it's evenly distributed. I'm not stretching it. I reload. Go a little bit further. See, I'm not going to stretch this. We just get out a habit sometimes of trying to, we think a little gesso is going to cover and make the whole thing. Now, just knowing how to do good background is going to save every one of you a lot of headaches. See how many times I'm reloading, making sure I got a nice even distribution of gesso, going back and blending in, making sure that all the canvas is very evenly covered. See, even here at the end, I'm not going to stretch. See, I've seen everyone do this, or almost everyone. They get to the end and they stretch it. Well, I'm not going to stretch that because I know that it's not going to have the same pigmentation and the same opaqueness. So now to the end, see? Even here, I'm not going to stretch that up. I'm going to reload. All right, now I've got a nice even distribution of gesso. Now, we want to keep that wet. One of the tricks to good blending is keeping it wet. So that's why one of the tricks, little techniques, is mister bottle. You can be back at a distance, lightly mist it, and only mist when you're trying to blend large areas or large bodies like the sky or water or whatever. And every time you mist, be sure you go back and work the water back into the paint so it doesn't leave any little spots and it makes an even creaminess, okay? You can really feel the difference. It goes on real smooth. Feels good. Now I go back, see, with these nice big X strokes. And now we're going to add the color. All we're doing is we're going to blend a real smooth, pretty background sky, and that's it. First thing we're going to do now is take orange. Now you can use any color, of course. Remember, this is just studies, so we're not going to go into all the different colors you can use. But for this case, I'm just going to take orange. Now see, what I do here is take the orange and I put it on, and I make sure that it's well distributed all the way across. There's no big blobs of color. Then I take my brush and I go back to these X's like this. See these X's? And I work my way across. And I work my way up until that has evenly, it's just even all the way across pretty much. And then it fades out. See where it just disappears? Now you're not ready to smooth this out yet, so don't panic on me. You want to see brush movement. It's the brush marks that we want to get out. Now, let me show you something else. Say you're piddling around here and I'm talking right now and it's drying, and every second that goes by means it's drying. That's where the mister bottle comes in handy, but you have to remember something. When you mist, you can't leave it that way. You have to work the paint back into the water, okay, or the water back into the paint. So every time you mist, be sure you go back and do a complete rework. It's real easy. But I'll tell you what, folks, I've done big murals and large paintings where I can blend for an hour if I just keep misting. Now you take your brush and you quickly rinse it out. Now we do these things on all of our paintings, but I've never done a technique tape where you just get specific things down, and this is going to really help you. Now see, I don't really clean it that good. I just get the excess paint out. Now we take, whatever color. Let's start with blue and a little burnt sienna to create sort of a gray tone. Now we put a strip of this across the top. I'm going to reload. Now this is called double loading. I got two colors, sienna and blue. And I work this across the top, just like we did the orange across the bottom. Make sure, see, don't start blending down. That's where a lot of people make their mistake. Go across first. Get your colors blended. Make sure it's all blended out of your brush. Then you go back to the big X's now. Watch what we do. And you gradually work your way down. Don't get in a hurry to get down there. Now, if you already see that it's starting to be a little too light for you, you want to darken your sky, all you do before you get too far into it is reload with a little more blue, a touch of sienna, a little purple. I'm going to add a little purple to it. Why not? How about a little too much purple? That doesn't really matter. The key is get your color in there and then blend it in while it's still wet. Work your way down. Now once you've got your color blended into your horizon, then you rinse your brush when we do the final blend while it's all still wet. Now I'm going to take my brush, rinse it out good. I hope you're following all these little techniques. Get all the excess paint out. Squeegee the excess water out with my fingers. Now I start in the middle, okay? And I'll make sure there's no color on there. Start in the middle with big X's. Now watch what happens. This is where you get a beautiful, this is where most of you get in trouble. You can't blend the two together and you get it too far down or too far up. Well, see, I've gently got them together. Now I start in the middle, and this is what you call feathering. So when you feather, you go like this, big X's, crisscross strokes, whatever you want to call them, and you go all the way to the top. Now I'm going to tip this forward because I have a little glare. I'm barely skimming the surface of the canvas. Now you need to know how to do this, folks. This not only teaches you how to paint a good sky, but it's more than that. It teaches you good brush control. Now I want you to notice something here. Notice this nice, soft, gentle blend all the way down from top to bottom. Yep, there's a little movement. You want that. You want to see changes of colors and values and movement of the brush. But here's what you don't want. This is what you do need to get out, and I'll show you how to do it. Until you learn to have a light touch. Most of us have a heavy hand, frankly. Some of us get in there and blend, and you get stuff like that, and you can't get it out. Well, what you do is always go back and rinse your brush out while it's still wet. Get the excess paint out, and learn to use this feather stroke. Folks, you've got to learn to be a feather painter if you're going to be good with your skies. Now see, I got marks all over it there. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to lightly skim. Now start in the middle. Always start in the middle because that's where it's easiest to get your brush moving. Barely skim, and then as I work my way up, now watch how quick these will come out. Isn't that exciting? And I just work right on through. Big X's. I'm going to tell you some do's and don'ts. Do not ever streak straight across, okay? That's one of the most unprofessional, amateurish strokes you can get. 99% of you, without proper instruction, will do that. You'll get up here and you'll start blending, and you think the best way to fix it is to go, folks, it doesn't ever blend. You'll probably notice your painting never gets blended properly. You always end up with streaks. You end up with, sometimes it gets muddy and you can't get it. You got to remember, the secret to good blending: moisture, X strokes, light feathering, start in the middle, blend up and down until you create this beautiful soft blend. Isn't that exciting? And I'll warn you about one more thing: never mist at this stage, okay? Because if you mist, say you want to just lighten a part, it may splatter and create little holes. You got to remember, misting is only for the main part, the underpainting. Unless if you want to mist the whole thing and paint it all out and soften it, that's one thing. If I misted now, I would have to just work it all in, and you could do that. Don't ever try to think you can mist one area. You've got to mist the whole thing or nothing at all, okay? That's why we do that, all right? Okay, now that you've seen how we blend it here, we're going to move into some other exciting things. That's called wet on wet blending, all right? Now there are other styles of, that's, oh, like if you're an oil painter or an acrylic painter, of course, as long as it's wet, you can create a soft blend like that. Now here's a study painting that I just used in one of our recent workshops. It's not completed. I don't have the deer completed. But I wanted to add some more clouds up here, but I want to show you how to use what we call a dry brush technique for blending for clouds, and then I'm going to show you a dry brush technique for blending when we highlight rocks and other objects like that, or tree bark or things like that. Now, when you're painting, when you hear the word dry brush, and you will hear me say that all the time in our tapes, our TV shows, and written in our books and in workshops. So you got to get used to all these terms, folks. This tape is only the things that I teach and share with you, and all the things we do. Now, dry brush blending is one of the more important steps. You usually use a bristle brush for dry brush blending, because bristle brushes are designed to take the punishment. If you dry brush with a sable brush, for instance, you do a lot of scrubbing, you'll ruin it, because those bristles are fairly sensitive to that. You can do some minor dry brushing, which I'll show you when we get to the rocks. But right now, I just want to show you the technique. Now, this is a dry background, okay? We'll just assume this was like we just finished the painting of the background there, and say that we're dry, I want to dry brush some clouds in there. Well, sometimes you can put clouds in while it's wet, but generally they blend in too much and they don't have the impact or the clarity that a dry painting would have. So now what you do is you take your bristle brush, in this case the number 6 bristle. We come down here on our palette with a little gesso, and I'm going to pick up a little water. Now these are little techniques and tricks. Instead of dipping the water in the jar over here, or the can, I'm going to come right to my big hake brush. Can you see it? And there's moisture on it. I'll just dab a little like this. That way I don't get too much water. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of orange to this mixture, or yellow, whatever the tint needs to be. And just a little more gesso there. And you work that in. Now the secret here is not to get too much paint on your brush. So I'm going to wipe this out, get the excess moisture out, wipe the paint out, and then just load the tip of it, just the very end like this. Then come up to your sky. Now let's say I want to put a cloud right here. Just dab that on. Now here's the secret. Now that's wet. So this is called wet on dry brush blending. Now you turn your brush, you can hold it like this. You don't have to hold it like a pencil. You can hold it like this, and you scrub like this. Now watch how nice this works. If I use the side of the brush and fade this out. See how this is called dry brush. You can just absolutely feel it. It's dry, it's rough, you get enough moisture in the paint, it's creamy, it just fades out into a beautiful, beautiful soft blend from the highlight value down into the background. You can't even see where the cloud began or ended. All right, so actually, now we come back and say you want to add another cloud. We just put a little dab of paint. See what I've done there? Then you tuck your brush sideways. You go ahead and form the top of your cloud. So I'm going to connect it to this one, but I want to fade it out, so I scrub. You can hear it. Hear that scrubbing noise? Well, that's obviously the dryness of the canvas. Now this is wet paint, so we have to call it wet on dry, but the technique is called dry brush. This is a watercolor technique. This is, watercolor artists actually sort of invented this. And so you leave an interesting shape to your cloud, but then you feather the back part out into the sky. Now, say I want to put another one right in this area. Well, I'll just come down and reload. I have to remix here. Now, the key here is to make sure your paint is not too wet, but also that it's not too dry. And if you hear the word creamy, that's exactly what it is. Creamy is kind of like soft butter. You know how butter gets just before it melts? All right, now I'm going to come in there, put a little dab of paint, and I Turn my brush on its side. That's what we call the chisel edge right there. And we scrub, fading it out, dry brushing it. So a lot of times when you're reading through the books, of course the books have a little glossary, a technique talks about these things. But if you see or hear the word dry brush, it simply means you're going to take wet paint, very small amount, you're going to put it on a dry canvas and you're going to scrub it out. See there? Now look at that nice big glob of paint, but I want to make a nice shape. It just simply means you're going to take the wet paint, small amount, and you're going to create a form and then blend its base out into the underpainting so that you don't see any edges. The only edge you see is the top edge, which you have to see in order for it to have form. But it's the blending part that we're talking about here. That's called dry brush blending. Very similar to adding the mist. You know, if we wanted to come down here and add a little mist back here, I could do the same thing here. See, just take that paint that was already there. Look at this. This is called dry brushing. We just did this a second ago, if you'll notice. But see, it's similar, but here you're creating a form up here at the clouds. Down here, you're just creating a sort of a suggestion of mist or haze. So you're not creating a form. You could create a low-hanging cloud like fog coming through or things like that. But this is called dry brush blending for creating things like clouds, yes, or fog or mist or haze. It's a wonderful technique. It's really exciting. You can also use that technique, we won't get into it now, but if you're doing people and things where you have a little more solid objects, where you need to create more of a rounded blend like an arm or a leg or an object, anything that you want to be a little smoother, this is the technique you use for blending called dry brush blending, okay? But for landscape painters, that's pretty much it.